Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for this day.
The First Lady of New York Radio, Joan Hamburg, entertaining and informative. Talk Radio 77 WABC.
One of the most interesting Americans is former Senator Bill Bradley. In fact, Bill served in the Senate from 79 to 97, representing the state of New Jersey. He also, as you know, was a candidate for the Democratic nomination for President of the United States. He has had and is having a fascinating career. Before he got into politics, he was an Olympic gold medalist. And, of course, my then beloved Knicks, a professional basketball player. And, Senator, we went, who knew that basketball had so many games? But my family, my husband, my kids, I think we went to thousands of Knick games, never missed it. And that was absolutely our passion. And by the way, the senator was elected to the Basketball Hall of Fame, too, has written many books and has done amazing things. So tell me, we're talking about Rolling Along, a documentary that is your story, wonderfully done. You are a true storyteller, and available on June 16th at the SVA Theater, the 17th at the AMC 19th Street, East 6th, and on Sunday the 18th at AMC 19th Street, East 6th. So let's go back to all of the things you've done and where this documentary started.
Well, Joan, it's so good to talk to you again. Seems like we've talked many times, and it's always a pleasure.
Thanks.
This started, I gave my political papers to Princeton, and they did an oral history project, and they interviewed 70 people. And I invited them all to a reception. 40 or 50 of them came, and I told stories about each one of them. Afterwards, one of the people in the room was Manny Eisenberg, who had produced 72 plays on Broadway, been a friend of 50 years, and never really, other than the first championship when he said, "Nice going," never given me a compliment, right?
Yeah.
And he came up to me afterwards and said, "This sounds a little bit like Hal Holbrook's Mark Twain. You ought to work something up."
Right.
And so from September 2018 till March 19, I wrote the first draft of this piece. I then took it on the road, went to 20 cities, went into theaters with it. They'd invite their subscribers and or their patrons or whatever, and I'd do it, reading it to them, and then get their response, and I'd write their responses down on the yellow pad. And that's how it evolved. And then COVID hit. And I actually think COVID ultimately made this project better because it forced me to realize, well, there wasn't really going to be a theater production. But at the end of COVID, I did rent a theater in New York, the Jewel Box Theater at Signature on 42nd Street, and did 4 performances. And we had 5 cameras. And the result is this particular is Rolling Along.
But how did you, it's indomitable when you realize you literally stand on a stage and walk and do all kinds of things, but you tell us an incredible story of a kid growing up in America who wears a lot of hats from the time he was a little kid, including a basketball cap. Where did this, at what point did you say, I'm going to do more, I'm actually going to do it, and you memorized it. That's extraordinary.
Oh, Yeah.
How I can't
Well,
imagine how you did that.
well, after asking people, after I went around to these 20 cities, so do I have to memorize this? And they said, well, if you're going to really do a performance
Mm.
or a presentation, you got to memorize it. And so I would walk around Central Park and I would say, I'm going to do 10% today. And I'd get that down and 20% and 40% and 50% and 80% and 90% and 100%.
Mm.
And once I got it all, then I would walk around for a couple of weeks just to every day make sure I had it down. And then what happened was I had a rec room in the apartment building that I live in, and every afternoon at 3:30 I would do it, and anybody could come. Sometimes nobody came. I did it anyway. Sometimes 10 people came, sometimes two, sometimes 8 or 9 or 15. And so that's how I did it, just doing it over and over and over and finding the right rhythms in the right places.
And you did. I mean, it's not easy to tell a story and hold people's attentions, particularly when it's your story. And you allow us to look at your growing up, at vulnerabilities, at achievements, at the whole person. And that isn't common. You know, you really have to
Yeah.
dig to get that. And you provided this telling us a story.
Well, I think that if one of my uh, objectives was to be honest with people, because my hope is that this process will lead to a healing, and the healing comes because you're honest. And so I wanted to be honest, and that's what I was.
When you finished doing this documentary and you performed it many times now, and looking back at not only your life, when I'm sure as so many things were possible and you made it possible, what is your head thinking about politics today? Are we at a crossroads? Have we crossed that road yet? Are Americans excited about possibilities and the future? What do you think?
Well, I think that we have real divisions in the country today. There's no question about that. But I think there are also a lot of things that you should be happy about. I mean, in terms of not only in terms of the progress in healing diseases or new technologies, but also I think that a lot of politicians want to make things happen. This example of the debt limit is just one example where people of both parties decided that it was better to get this thing done than not. And so I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that we will be able to move things forward in this country.
And you feel that both parties, Republican and Democrat, are starting to deal with the real issues that we're dealing with every day?
Well, I think there are a lot of things that we have to do as a country. But one of the things that I try to cover in rolling along through my own story is to get people to realize that there are political issues, then there's a humanity issue. And as long as you can see the humanity of the person across the table you're negotiating with, there's a chance to find a solution that works for both of you. If you simply treat the other party or the other person as a cardboard cutout of evil or whatever, then it's going to be pretty difficult to get some negotiations going and to get anything that'll move our collective humanity an inch forward. And I believe that that's what we need to have happen in America. And I think that, there are good people who are in the process. Yeah, when Cory Booker was elected senator from New Jersey, he asked me what he should do, and I should make 5 Republican friends. And he did, real friends. And I said, sometime along the road, they'll help you. And indeed, he had a bill, an amendment in the Appropriations Committee for a third tunnel under the Hudson River between New Jersey and New York. And the deciding vote on the committee was a Republican from Mississippi, Roger Wicker, who he had befriended. So the Senate still works in a very human way. And that to me is really important. And it continues to be that way.
Well, we certainly know, and Senator Bradley is in many cases leading the charge, that changes have to be made in this country, no matter what party you belong to, no matter how you deal with politics. It's essential for the future of America. But do you feel that Americans are ready to get off all this baloney with both parties and all this anger and separation, that they're ready to hear?
I think so. I do think so. And you know, Joan, the opening song of the show, Rolling Along, that I just did, used to be a Van Morrison song called And the Healing Has Begun. And then Van Morrison refused to allow me to use the song.
Not nice.
And so I ended up, of course, calling Steve Van Zandt of the E Street Band. He gave me a song that works great. But I realized I wanted the Morrison song because the title, And the Healing Has Begun. And that is clearly what we need in this country. And it's clearly what ideally I'd like to see this show, film, actually lead to some healing in the country. Because I think if you're honest, that's the first step to get healing. And I tried to be honest. Is that going to happen every day in Congress? No. Is that going to happen in a presidential race where, you could have some absurdly bad people running? No, probably not. But I do think it can happen. And every citizen has a responsibility. That's what this country is all about. And the first responsibility is to vote. The second is to stay informed. And I'm not one who's turned off on everybody who's been elected to politics. I think it's a noble profession. People can rise to the occasion. There are bad apples around, no question, but there always have been.
Are you finished with politics, or you're getting excited again?
Well, I'm clearly finished with politics as a elected official or a candidate. I'm too old, but I'm not finished.
Are you kidding? You're not too old. You're like a baby, honey, compared to.
Okay, baby. So I never finished as a citizen, as someone who cares, as somebody who has ideas. I like talking to people I know who are in the Senate or the House or at the White House, and to the extent that I offer some ideas that they're interested in, terrific. But I'm under no illusion that I'm going to be the man in the arena. The closest I'm going to get to being the man in the arena is being the man on the stage.
Right. Well, that's right. Now you're a performer. But I was always wondering, when you left the New York Knicks and became a senator, was that a big adjustment, or was that really fun for you?
When I was finished, when I stopped playing with the Knicks, I really was finished with basketball and beginning a new career. Naturally, senators were aware that I played basketball, but for about my first 2 or 3 years, I refused to talk about basketball with senators in the Senate. Mm-hmm. I wanted to prove myself according to the Senate standards. And to me, it was a new life, a new experience. I had a lot to learn. I was 35 years old, the youngest senator. And I remember the first day I walked into the Finance Committee, they were discussing some international trade agreement. And I sat way down at the end where the junior members sit, and I did not understand one word. And I thought, oh, I got a lot of work to do. And so I went back and did the work and you try to master the subject, whether it's taxes or trade or whatever. And from that comes your ability to influence others and power, and you get things done. And I had always wanted to do that, and I found that it took on a life of its own. It was just the second act. I mean, the first was basketball. I loved it. I loved everything about it. Second was the Senate. I loved it. I loved almost everything about it. And I didn't particularly like it when politics got involved in the life of the Senate. And so instead of keeping people in the middle where they listened to each other and found the common humanity and got compromised, instead would pull you to the extremes. I didn't like that. But there was enough of the former that it was a very worthwhile time.
Yeah, without question. And of course, politics is here to stay. And even if a lot of Americans are pessimistic and feel it's stuck, we're caught in the middle of all this, Bill Bradley feels that there's a lot ahead. And once Americans get out, and the hardest issue, to get everyone to vote, you would never think it could be as complicated as it is. But if we could only overcome that lack of I've got to vote, we would have a different story, don't you think?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the one responsibility that you have. And people who abdicated, in my view, can't complain. And people say, well, it doesn't really matter. It does matter. It matters tremendously. And it doesn't take a lot of effort, but it is really critical.
I'm talking to Bill Bradley, rolling along his documentary, which is playing on June 16th, 17th, 18th at various theaters, the SVA Theater and the AMC 19th Street East, and for those 3 days. And I was fascinated by this. It's not only the story of an American, it's the story of a country and how it is working and how it will continue to work. But it takes us all being involved. And don't forget that before that and before serving in the Senate, Bill Bradley was a gold medalist. He was a professional basketball player with the Knicks. And if you're a Knicks fan, there's something emotional about that team that we can't let go of. You know, you just become so attached to it. Do you still love the game?
Still love the game. Absolutely. I'm watching the finals.
Yeah.
I like Denver.
You do?
Yeah, I like the way Joe, whatever his name is, Djokovic passes.
Uh-huh.
I love the way the team moves. Miami's played well, but at the same time, I think it's the Murray and Djokovic show that turned it into a championship team.
Yeah,
but the point is, it's team. But when people like to get assists, that helps other players.
Okay, well, you did a good job on the documentary. I'm looking. Did you like, by the way, the performance aspect?
I did. I really did. I liked it. It was not unlike basketball, but it was different. And I like telling stories. I mean, for example, I told one story. It was me back in 1964 when I made the Olympic team. In basketball, I went to a Russian professor at college and I asked him, could you maybe give me a few words in Russian that I could use in case I get out there in the game against the Soviets and I get into trouble? So he gave me the words. We get to the finals of the Olympics. We're playing the Soviet team. And my man is 6'7", weighs 240. I'm my present height and weigh about 195. And about 8 minutes of the game, he hits me with an elbow up on my upper chest, my lower neck, and I fall back. And then I remember what the professor said. he gave me the words in Russian. And so I look him directly in the eye and I say, "Bucha Storoshna," which in translated is, "Hey, big fella, watch out." And the result was the Soviets stopped calling their plays verbally because they thought I understood Russian.
Close enough. I'm talking to Bill Bradley, William Bradley, and he's got an amazing documentary called Rolling Along, and it's in our market June 16th, 17th to 18th at AMC 19th Street East 6 and the SVA Theater. So
That's
get
a
it.
part of the Tribeca Film Festival.
Yeah, oh, that's a big time, too. It's one of the major documentaries, so it's all very exciting. So you have a whole new career ahead of you, too.
I don't think so, Joan. I think this was my.
I don't know. You'll see. No swan song yet. You've got
I'm not. There'll always be something new.
something new and something exciting. And thank you for sharing your life.
Thank you so much, Joan, for the chance to talk to you. I've admired you so many years, and thank you for all you've contributed.
Well, we are lucky in that we have passions and care about things and care about our country and understand that we have to stand up so that everyone else can join in. And we live in the greatest country in the world, and it continues thanks to people like you. I look forward to talking to you again. Good luck with the documentary, and I look forward to many more adventures with the one and only
Thank
Bill
you, Joan.
Bradley. Bye, my dear. I'm Joan Hamburg, and you're listening to WABC, so stay tuned.